always thought I could control many things in my life: loneliness, heartbreak, even desires. But that day, I realized how everything had slipped out of my hands. This story marked the beginning of one of the most unexpected and transformative moments of my life. I am 53 years old, and people are often surprised when they hear my age. It has been 10 years since my divorce from Andrew. We separated because he was unfaithful, and I still don't fully understand why. I have always carried myself with elegance and confidence, but solitude has left a deep void inside me. That morning, I was getting ready to meet my friend Eleanor for coffee. Like me, she is also divorced. I chose a knee-length skirt and a soft-colored blouse. Glancing at my reflection, I murmured to myself with a faint smile, "I still have it." At the cafe, we talked about past relationships and the silence in our lives. My gaze drifted outside, landing on my nephew Daniel. He's 24, full of life, and always warm and respectful. But that day, he wasn't alone. Next to him stood someone striking: Lucas, his 27-year-old friend. His broad frame and composed demeanor made him hard to ignore. Later at home, I saw a large package, the new entertainment system I had ordered. Seeing its size, I knew I couldn't set it up alone. I hesitated before calling Daniel, remembering his offer. "We'll come together," he responded. When the doorbell rang, my heart quickened slightly. Daniel entered first, his usual carefree energy filling the space. Then Lucas stepped inside, his presence immediately shifting the atmosphere. As they worked, I observed them. Daniel was animated and talkative, while Lucas was focused, handling everything with precision. At one point, as he passed me a cable, our hands brushed. "Sorry about that," he said with a faint smile. In the kitchen, I heard soft footsteps behind me. Turning around, I saw Lucas standing in the doorway. "I just wanted to thank you," he said, his voice warm yet measured. "No need to thank me. If anything, I should be thanking you both," I replied, trying to sound casual. His expression softened. Loneliness isn't always a bad thing, but sometimes having someone to share it with makes everything more meaningful. After they finished, I thanked them both. "Enjoy it, Aunt Cla," Daniel teased. Lucas met my gaze and offered a polite smile. "If you ever need any evening." As I cleaned up, something on the table caught my eye, a small flower with a folded note beside it. My heart skipped a beat as I read, "If you ever need anything, you can call me." Lucas. That night, I sat in front of my TV, my phone in hand. Should I reach out? The thought of texting him felt oddly exhilarating. After a deep breath, I typed a message. "Lucas, thank you for the flower. That was very thoughtful. If you're free, would you like to join me for coffee and help me test the sound system?" Moments later, my phone buzzed. "That sounds like a great idea, Claire. I'll bring a good bottle of wine." Before the story gets even crazier, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications for more. Your support through comments and likes will mean so much as this story unfolds. When Lucas arrived, he carried a bottle of wine and a confident smile. "A good wine is essential for a proper test," he said playfully, setting the bottle down. As we sat on the couch, the television humming softly in the background, our conversation grew deeper. We talked about books, music, and dreams, things I hadn't shared with someone in a long time. At one point, he glanced at me with an intensity that made my heart pound. "You know, Claire, I didn't just come here to test the sound system," he admitted, his voice low, a slow smile playing on his lips. "I came to get to know you better." The air between us shifted. A quiet understanding settled in, making my pulse quicken. As the evening stretched on, we laughed and exchanged knowing glances. The dim glow of the room added to the warmth, creating a sense of intimacy that felt both natural and unexpected. When Lucas finally stood to leave, he hesitated at the door. "I'd like to see you again, Cla. If you'd like that too." I nodded, my smile soft yet sure. "I think I'd like that." As I closed the door behind him, I leaned against it for a moment, my heart still racing. This was just the beginning of something neither of us had planned, but perhaps something we both needed. That night, as I sat alone with my thoughts, I found myself replaying our conversation, the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel. It had been a long time since someone had stirred something so deep inside me. I wasn't sure where this was heading, but for the first time in years, I was willing to find out. If you've made it this far, I know this story has deeply affected you. There's so much more to share, and you won't want to miss any of it. Don't forget to hit the follow button, turn on notifications, and leave a comment about what you think of this story. The next morning, I woke up feeling lighter, though my mind was still replaying every moment from the night before. The way Lucas looked at me, the subtle tension in the air. I hadn't felt that alive in years. As I made my coffee, my phone buzzed. A message. "Lucas, good morning, Claire. I hope you slept well. Last night was nice. I'd love to see you again soon. Maybe dinner?" I smiled, feeling that same flutter in my chest. Without overthinking, I typed back, "Me. Good morning, Lucas. I'd like that. Dinner sounds lovely." The rest of the day passed in a blur, though I couldn't help but wonder what exactly I was getting myself into. He was younger, significantly so, and yet there was a quiet maturity about him, something grounding and steady. Still, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "What are you doing, Claire?" I chose to ignore it. That evening, Lucas suggested a small, intimate Italian restaurant downtown. Candlelit, warm, and inviting. When I arrived, he was already there, waiting by the door, dressed in a dark shirt and jeans that fit him a little too well. His smile when he saw me was easy, genuine. "You look beautiful," he said, his voice low, sending a pleasant shiver through me. "Thank you. You clean up nicely yourself," I teased, feeling that familiar, exhilarating tension build between us. Dinner was effortless. Laughter, shared stories, stolen glances. There was something about the way he listened, how his eyes stayed on me, as though I were the only person in the room. Halfway through dinner, as I reached for my wine glass, our hands brushed again. This time, neither of us pulled away. "Claire," he said softly, leaning in just a little closer. "I know this, whatever this is, might feel unexpected, but I meant what I said last night. I want to know you. I want to see where this could go." I could have pulled back, made a polite excuse, ended the evening safely. But I didn't want to be safe, not anymore. "I want that too," I whispered back. Later that night, he walked me to my door. The hallway was quiet, the air between us thick with anticipation. As I fumbled for my keys, I felt him close behind me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel the heat of him. "Claire," he murmured, his voice soft yet steady. I turned, and for a long moment, we just stood there, the world outside falling away. And then, slowly, as though giving me time to change my mind, he leaned in. The first kiss was tentative, almost questioning, but when I didn't pull away, when I kissed him back, something between us snapped. The kiss deepened, and I found myself pressed gently against the door, his hands warm on my waist, my heart pounding wildly. When we finally broke apart, both of us a little breathless, he rested his forehead against mine, a small, crooked smile playing on his lips. "I should go," he whispered, though neither of us moved. "You should," I agreed, but I didn't open the door. "Claire, tell me to leave and I will," he said, his voice low, rough with restraint. I didn't say a word. Instead, I took his hand and opened the door, leading him inside. This wasn't supposed to happen, but some things in life aren't meant to be controlled. And that night, for the first time in years, I stopped trying. The door closed behind us with a soft click, and for a moment, neither of us moved. The air felt thick, charged with something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in a long time. Desire, curiosity, and maybe a little fear. Lucas stood there, watching me, his eyes dark and unreadable, waiting for a sign, a word, anything to tell him this was okay. I took a step closer, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. "Would you like some tea or something stronger?" My voice came out softer than I intended, almost hesitant. A slow smile curved his lips. "Tea sounds nice, but I think I'd rather just sit with you for a while, if that's okay." I nodded, feeling strangely relieved. "Of course." We settled on the couch, the glow of the TV still faintly lighting the room. I hadn't bothered turning it off. The background noise somehow made the moment feel less intense, though the tension between us was undeniable. Lucas sat close enough that his arm brushed against mine, sending little sparks through me. We talked, but this time, the conversation was slower, more careful, as though we were both aware of the thin line we were walking. At one point, I laughed at something he said, something silly about how terrible he was at cooking, and I felt his gaze on me, lingering a little too long. When I turned my head to meet his eyes, he was already watching me. "Claire," he murmured, his voice low, rough around the edges. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. He leaned in, and this time, when his lips found mine, there was nothing tentative about it. The kiss was warm and deep, a slow burn that made my skin tingle. His hand slid gently to the small of my back, pulling me closer, and for a moment, I let myself forget everything. My age, my past, my hesitation. I don't know how long we sat like that, lost in each other, but when we finally pulled apart, both of us were breathing a little harder. Lucas rested his forehead against mine, his thumb brushing lightly over my cheek. "I don't want to rush this," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. I really like being with you." His words caught me off guard, disarming me completely. "I like being with you too," I admitted, feeling a vulnerability I hadn't felt in years. We sat there for a while, wrapped in a quiet intimacy that felt both new and familiar. Eventually, he stood to leave, though I could tell he didn't really want to. "Good night, Claire," he said softly, his hand lingering on the doorframe. "I'll call you tomorrow." I smiled, feeling something warm and hopeful stir inside me. I'd like that. When the door closed behind him, I stood there for a long time, leaning against it, my heart still racing. Something was happening here, something I hadn't planned, hadn't expected, and for once, I wasn't afraid to let it. That night, as I lay in bed, I found myself smiling, replaying every moment. The way he looked at me, the way he made me feel. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once, but for the first time in years, I felt alive. If you're still here, I know this story has touched you in ways you didn't expect. There's so much more to come, and I promise you won't want to miss a single moment. Don't forget to hit that follow button, turn on notifications, and tell me what you think in the comments below.